Mark Watts, Elitefts.com. I'm here at Showtime Strength and Performance in Newark, Ohio with owner Nick Showman. We're going to go over a really quick teaching progression for the athletic position. One thing is coaches in the private sector, high school setting, even the college setting, one thing we can't do is assume that athletes know how to get in an athletic position. Nowadays with the sedentary lifestyle, it's one of those things that we can't really assume that. You know, Joe Ken wrote an article a while back about this, about making sure that, again, don't assume that they know how to be in that position. So we'll go over just some basic cues that we got. The first one's going to be as far as the knee bend. One thing we don't want to do is talk about their foot position. One thing we learned from Cam Davis is let the athlete stand what's comfortable. You can make adjustments once you get to that, once you get into kind of jump training or Olympic lifting, whatever it may be. But right now, don't even talk about feet width. If they ask, we like to say about hip width. So if I draw a straight line from the hips straight down to the toes, try to keep your feet relatively straight, and that'll change based on the exercise. But when we talk about that knee bend, one thing we got from University of Kentucky is making sure that the athlete flexes their quads, right? Make a muscle in their legs and then just relax. And that's as much knee bend as you want them to have. So it's kind of a little bit of a cue just to kind of help, because if not, if you say bend your knees slightly, they always go ahead and just bend it a little bit too much. So again, flex the quads, relax, and that's about how much they want to be. The second cue, we talked about this before in previous videos, is getting them to get their scapula retracted. And one of the things we talk about a cue is putting their shoulder blades in their back pockets. But sometimes younger athletes, they may not know that. They might have such poor T-spine mobility, or they just never heard that. So one thing we want to do to give them basically a physical cue along with a verbal cue is to go ahead, have their hands in that punch position, right? Sometimes you use that for plyometrics and whatnot. And so now they have a cue. So now I'm going to have them bring their elbows back as far as they can, and then bring their elbows down. So what happens is that really activates that, making sure that, again, their T-spine is in a better position, and they get that scapula basically retracted and repressed down in that position. So again, what happens is when you get your athlete to bring their shoulder blades together, sometimes they end up shrugging, and this is not the position we want. So that's kind of a good cue for them. The last thing is that if you want to get them into that power position, the jump position, the loaded position, however you want to term that, the one thing we like to use, something we got from University of Baylor, would be just to go ahead and have the hands on the thighs. So I went through the cues with the knees, with the soft knees, and the shoulder blades in the back pocket. Have the hands on the thighs. I'm going to go ahead and turn Nick about 3/4 way so you can kind of see. Hands on the thighs, and I'm going to slide my hands, if I keep my shoulder blades in my back pocket, slide my hands down my thighs till I get to my knees. And just stand there with my hands on my knees by pushing my hips back. In fact, if you want to do this where you give the athlete a cue where they have to push their butt into, if you have the athletes against the wall, then they can push their hips back into the wall and have them touch. That's one way, but again, now I'm in that athletic position. If I'm doing Olympic lifting, if I'm jumping, if I'm doing kettlebell swings, whatever it may be, I can then go ahead and adjust my foot position, but the athlete can keep going back to that same position. Right? So again, if I would go ahead and put my elbows up like I'm catching a clean, everything else is still the same, right? When I go in that catch position. If I'm going to hold a kettlebell, dumbbell, doesn't matter. Everything should go back to this, because again, when you're training young athletes, you have a limited amount of time. If you can use the same cues for multiple athletic tasks, sometimes that can save you some headaches in the end, to make sure, again, it reinforces those good positions. So try those out, see if those cues work for you. If you have anything else you think that helps you, make sure, again, you include those in the comments. Thanks.